Many of us believe that we know what Jesus will do when he returns. But I wanted to share a story from Richard Wurmbrand in God's Underground. This is his book. He spent 14 years in communist prison for his faith in Christ. He is truly one of the fathers of our faith, one of my heroes, without doubt. He suffered for 14 years in communist prisons, and he shares a story about being in prison on Christmas Eve. He says, on Christmas Eve, prison talk became more serious. There were few quarrels, no swearing, little laughter. Every man thought of those he loved, and there was a feeling of communion with the rest of mankind, which was usually so remote from our lives. I spoke of Christ, but all the time my feet and hands were cold as steel, my teeth clattered, and an icy lump of hunger in my stomach seemed to spread through my body until only the heart lived. When I stopped, a simple farming lad took up where I had left off. Aristar had never been to school, yet he talked so naturally, describing the scene of the Nativity as if it had happened in his own yard, in his own barn, that week, that there were tears in the eyes of all who listened. Someone began to sing in the prison that evening. At first his voice was quiet, and hardly came in among the thoughts that occupied my mind, of my wife and my son, but gradually the voice swelled wonderfully in the crisp, clean air, until it echoed through the corridors, and everybody stopped what they were doing. We were very quiet when he ceased. The guards, huddled in their quarters around a cook stove, did not stir all evening. We began to tell stories, and when I was asked for one, I thought of this song, and told them this old Jewish legend. King Saul of Israel brought David, the shepherd honored for killing Goliath, to his court. David loved music, and he was delighted to see a harp of great beauty standing in the palace. Saul said, I paid much for that instrument, but I was deceived. It gives forth only ugly sounds. David took it up to try, and drew from it music so exquisite that every man was moved. The harp seemed to laugh and sing and weep. King Saul asked, How is it that the musicians I called brought discord from this harp, and only you could bring out music? David, the future king, replied, Before me, each man tried to play his own song on these strings. But I sang to the harp its own song. I recalled how it had been a young tree with birds that chirped in its branches and limbs green with leaves that blossomed in the sun. I reminded it of the day when men came to cut it down, and you heard it weep under my fingers. I explained that this is not the end. Its death as a tree meant the start of a new life in which it would glorify God as a harp, and you heard how it rejoiced under my hands. So when the Messiah comes, many will try to sing his harp. So when the Messiah comes, many will try to sing on his harp their own songs, and their tunes will be harsh. We must sing on his harp his own song, the song of his life, passions, joys, sufferings, death, and resurrection. Only then will the music be true. And I think, for me personally, that when life is coming out of my life, when my actions and words, the way I represent Jesus, is reproducing life, I know I'm singing the Messiah's song. But when it doesn't matter what Bible scriptures I'm quoting or what church activities I'm doing, if what I'm doing is only producing more animosity, more anger, more angst, if it's not ever bearing fruit, then I have to wonder if I'm not singing my own song on the Messiah's harp because it's coming out harsh. Jesus is very winsome, and I think that's what we need to be. That doesn't mean that there isn't a time for strong words. Jesus at times had strong words, but it's so easy to try to conform Jesus into our image when we're called to be conformed to his image. So I just found this story just to be, Richard Wurmbrand is not only rich because of his long history of being faithful in the midst of persecution, but also because he was well-read. He knew multiple languages, and this story comes out so poetically that we just need to be careful, conscious that we are singing the Messiah's song on the Messiah's harp and not our own song.